Hey guys, it's Lavetta.
And it's Miriam.
And this is Notorious Women Podcast, a comedy podcast about some of history's most notorious women. I'm sorry,
That's
you
right.
were about to say something funny.
Oh my God, I don't even remember. My brain just left the building. This is not good.
It is summer.
It's summer. And it's finally hot in Southern California. And
yeah, that was reminds me.
I used to complain about the heat. Like, oh God, it's so hot.
Yeah.
And then like the first couple of weeks of June was like cold. And I was like, I'm just kidding. It's time to be too hot. But then the problem is that I'm not at summer camp. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why no one... My mother did not sign me up this year. I'm confused.
Adulting sucks sometimes.
I don't understand.
Sometimes adulting is great, but you know.
But in this case scenario, I think we need to reduce society completely.
But I will say this. Kids can make fun anywhere and out of anything. Like,
you know
literally,
what? But
you
they
could
can
just
also,
give them...
Like, I hear you, but they can also start fights out of anything and with anyone.
Which is entertaining, but like a kid, like when you were a kid and you had a swimming pool, like either in your complex or like a like one of those like blow up pools or whatever, you thought it was the
someone
biggest
has
thing
a water
ever.
Source. Yeah, that's true.
And then when you get older, you're like, it's kind of a shitty pool, but you had
oh my
so much
God.
fun when you were a kid.
So I live in a community that has like we don't have a pool, but there's a community pool, and we were with friends at the pool, and apparently like the sprinklers went on. So a bunch of kids were like, oh my God, get out of the pool and run to those sprinklers. And I was like, we work so hard to make an actual swimming pool available to you. And the sprinklers have been available the whole time. Okay.
The whole time. Because there's also like water in the air, flying around. You want to run through it. Like it's just
this is so much fun. Why don't we do this more often? Because, HOA is not free, baby. Jump in the pool. Okay.
Well, on that note, I think we should get started.
Let's get started.
Who's your notorious woman for me this week? Because I believe, yes, you are first. You are first this week.
Let me call it. Those are the first worldest problems anyone could ever have. I am aware. Like, I heard it.
Yes. I know. But I mean, I know as an American, you don't think that we're privileged at all because we don't live in a fancy house in Beverly Hills or
it turns out I do not.
Bel Air. But it's just like, yeah, those are first world problems. But that's why children are kids have no sense of money, right? So they're like, yeah, we can find like a water hose and have fun.
At the same time, they're like, I don't know why we're not in Hawaii right now, mother. Like, why not? Like, let's just go.
I wish a kid would say that. Like, your child is a spoiled brat if they are like...
My children say that. And I'm like, let me tell you why we're not in Hawaii right now. Okay.
You know what? You should always respond like any Black or immigrant parent, I would say, is like, when you have Hawaiian money.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of do. I'm like, well, baby, you get a job. Yep. Right?
You got Hawaiian money.
You're living rent-free in my house. Right? You could save it. You could save all of your job money. Right. Yeah. And they're like, is there a job that doesn't require work, mother? And I'm like, no.
I mean, let's get this YouTube channel popping. Listen, there are 5-year-olds making $10 million. Come on, kid. What you doing?
Yeah, like they have parents who won't allow them to do it.
I know.
And they're so mad. My kids would love it. They were like, let's be YouTube stars. I'm like, nope. I have control over you until you're 18. Mm-mm.
Nope. Yeah. Well, you have control over them until they're about 13 or 14. Then they'll sneak into their room and do stuff that you don't know. Hopefully it's just stupid YouTube stuff and not like...
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, because I got to go to sleep sometime.
Yeah, you do. Kids are very smart when they get to that age. Yeah,
kids
but we're
are
smarter.
Really smart. Yeah, like for now, but like only for now. Okay.
Also, because you're not delusional like some parents. Like it's fine. It's like, you're like, what you doing in there?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody. Kidding?
Yeah.
All right.
So who's your notorious woman this week?
My notorious woman. This is going to be a little different today.
Okay.
So, Arundhati Katju.
Oh,
think I said it right. She's Indian. She's from India.
Okay.
And I just really wanted to talk about her, but I don't have a ton about her childhood. She is in her 40s and is living her life now. She was born in August 19th, 1982 in Prayagraj, India. She is a lawyer, and she qualifies to practice both in India and New York. And she has litigated many notable cases at the Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court. And I would like to talk about what she did and how she lives her life. Because she's a notorious woman, and we just, we got to find our way around how we approach her, because she's badass. All right.
Okay.
So she litigated the Section 377 case. So what is that? So in 2013, the Indian Supreme Court upheld the law, which was called the sodomy law, and she had litigated that, and she lost, essentially. That was called the Suresh Kumamoto Kushal versus Naz Foundation. So in 2018, in the Navtej Singh Johar versus ORS organizations, I don't know, listen, I'm not really sure. It's the 377 case versus Union of India through Secretary Ministry of Law and Justice. As I said, the 377 case. There was a landmark decision of the Supreme Court of India that decriminalized all consensual sex among adults, including homosexual sex. So this is something I think she'd been fighting for years, and she won. The court was asked to determine the constitutionality of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which was a colonial-era law. I mean, right?
Always goes back to the colonizers.
I'm not even looking for it. It just shows up.
It's in every fabric fiber of modern civilizations. So
it really is.
Really is.
You cannot avoid it.
Nope.
Everywhere.
Nope.
This law criminalized homosexual acts as, quote, unnatural offense. Why is the law in my bedroom? Like, what do you care? What do you care?
Oh, what do you care?
I'm a consenting adult. Go away.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
The statute criminalized also all anal sex and all oral sex between everybody.
And oral sex.
Like, how dare they?
Something tells me that only usually goes one way.
Something tells me to agree with what you just said. Yeah.
The men are like, the straight cis men are like, I don't want to have to do that. So let's make it illegal. So if my wife asked,
right?
Say, baby, it's illegal.
That's illegal.
Do you want me to go to jail?
Let me tell you, this woman is our hero. So in September 6th, 2008, September 6th, 2018, the court unanimously declared the law unconstitutional, quote, insofar as it criminalizes consensual sexual conduct between adults of the same sex, unquote. So the verdict was hailed as a landmark decision for LGBT rights in India. It says LGBT, but LGBTQI plus for everyone, really. And campaigners waited outside the court cheering after the verdict was pronounced.
Oh, good news, good news.
There were elements to that Section 377 that I should note, if you are aware of this, that sex with minors, non-consensual sexual acts remained in force. So if you're like, there was some good things, they kept the good things. Okay?
Yes. Go India.
Yeah, right? Listen. Yeah. By the way, abortion is still legal in all of India. Point that out.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
America, bitches. America.
Yeah, America. America's getting like shorter and shorter in the word. It was America. It was America. Now it's like America. It's really a grunt. Okay. Sorry. Something in my throat. So she also litigated in the case of a trans man being illegally confined by his parents. So what happened? So in Shivani Bhatt versus National Capital Territory of Delhi and others, Katju, she represented Shivani Bhatt, who was a 19-year-old trans man who was deceitfully brought from the United States to India by his parents. So she filed a writ petition in the Delhi High Court on behalf of him for protection from harassment and his right to return to the United States. The Delhi High Court ruled in favor of Shivani and ordered inter alia, I don't know what that means, that's lawyer speak, that Shivani's parents must return his travel documents so he could travel back to the United States. And the court reaffirmed his right to self-determination, travel, and education.
Wow.
Okay, India.
Go India.
Right? Now, she also litigated in other big cases that I'm going to touch on, but not a lawyer, so not a historian. So, I read it and I was like, oh, that's complicated. So not for my brain. There was the Augusta Westland bribery case and the 2G Spectrum corruption case. So, kind of interesting. Look it up. Yeah. Now, also the Jessica Lal murder case, which is a really interesting case, but it's just all about her and not about Arundhati. Okay, I want to say her name right. Arundhati. So I decided not to go too deep. So her law practice encompasses white-collar defense, general civil litigation, and public interest cases. So she obtained a BA LLB honorary. I guess that's what, like a law degree. Okay. I don't know what anything means. So
I think
many
law
letters.
degree is JD in the United States, but maybe in India is something else.
But I think it's India. It's more letters. I don't know.
Okay. Oh, hey.
Right?
Good guess.
I would want a lot of letters. If I became a lawyer, I'd be like, yes, all the letters. Look what I did.
Exactly.
From the National Law School of India University, Bangalore, in 2005. So after practicing at the Indian bar for 11 years, she enrolled in the LL.M program, I don't know what that is, in 2017 at Columbia University, New York, where she was a human rights fellow, James Kent Scholar, and public interest honoree. So in the year 2019, in an interview with CNN Fareed Zakaria, she revealed that she was in a relationship with lawyer Menaka Guruswamy. And it was with Menaka that she convinced the Supreme Court in 2018 to decriminalize Section 377. So what I didn't say earlier is that they did it together and they are a lesbian couple, an open lesbian couple.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
Isn't that awesome?
You go, girl.
They have both advanced LGBTQ AI plus
AI.
plus just all the pluses rights as lawyers in India, and have been named this year's recipients of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation Medal in Law. So this is a quote. What is that? So it's sponsored jointly by the University of Virginia and the Thomas Jefferson Foundation. And they you're going to have opinions. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
They say, I'm going to join you in your opinions. The nonprofit organization that owns and operates Monticello, the Thomas Jefferson Foundation medals are awarded each year to recognize the achievements of those who embrace endeavors in which Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, third U.S. president, and founder of the University of Virginia, excelled and held in high regard. So, sometimes, I think it's kind of fitting because, would Thomas Jefferson? I don't know.
When it comes to queer rights, it's so interesting because sometimes the far back you go, the more advanced they were in their thinking about gender stuff.
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Gender and sexual stuff is interesting. Not racism, obviously, or
no.
Having sex with very young girls like Sally Hemings. That's a whole other story. Yeah. But I mean, listen, our founding fathers are very, very flawed.
Yes.
So yeah, it is what it is. But
it's
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, his descendants, you do what you can with the name, and sometimes you wonder if they would approve of what their descendants have done with their namesake or their legacy, and we don't know the answer because they're not here. So
I think it's fascinating that
yeah, but if that's what it takes,
Indian women who are a couple, but you know what, like take something questionable and make it good.
Yeah, let's just take it.
Yeah.
Like, listen, if it helps her with her work, I'm all for it. Get that money.
Exactly. So in 2016, she was awarded the Human Rights Fellowship by Columbia University and the Women's International Leadership Program Fellowship at International House, New York. She was also awarded Columbia Law School's Herman N. Finkelstein Memorial Fellowship 2018 and 2019. And in 2018, she was a U.S.-Italy Young Leaders Fellow. She was also a TEDx speaker at TEDx Verhadija 19, where she spoke about how, quote, stories can change the law. Mm-hmm. In April 2019, she was included on the Time 100 Times list of the 100 most influential people in the world, alongside Menachem Guruswamy.
I love this.
Right? In June 2019, to mark the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, an event widely considered a watershed moment in the modern LGBTQI++ rights movement, right? Stonewall, we all know. Queerty named her one of Pride 50 trailblazing individuals who actively ensure society remains moving towards equality, acceptance, and dignity for all queer people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Love that.
And that's what I have of her. She's written a lot of articles that you can look up that, she has an opinion piece, 377 verdict is a new dawn, not just for LGBT rights, but for individual liberties in India. She has another article, LGBT rights. And it's interesting because everything I've read about what she's done, it's all LGBT, which is everything in the US is LGBTQIA. They're adding to it.
I love that.
Rights in India, the doctrine of constitutional morality and counter-majoritarianism in the context of institutional supremacy. And if that title doesn't tell you how smart she is, I don't know what does.
I know. Wow, she's extraordinary.
Yeah, right? She really...
Yeah. This is our kind of notorious woman. She's... getting rid of confronting bigotry in places that it means the most, in the court.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, the more that happens worldwide, the more... the better we are.
The better we are. She's doing God's work or the universe's work or whoever you serve.
The crystals work.
Yeah.
The energies work.
The stuff that her legacy is that she's making through her work the lives of people better and freer.
Yeah.
And happier.
That's huge strides for India, for the world.
Thank you for sharing that. And her name again?
Her name is Arundhati Katju.
Arundhati Katju. I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
My notorious woman this week is the equal badass.
Okay.
I'm going, last week, I'm going back. I'm going way back.
Oh, my. Okay.
Old school.
Okay.
Old
All right.
school.
All right.
Uh, so my notorious woman this week is Kandake Amanirenas,
Okay,
aka
Okay.
Kandake Amanirenas, aka the warrior queen of Kush.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, forgive me if I butchered that. I'm sure I did in my American accent. But Kandake Amanirenas, aka the warrior queen of Kush, Kandake, I'll call her Amanirenas. So she basically, so a little context. So basically, she's the queen of Kush. And so Kush was the kingdom to the south of Egypt, which was pretty much divided into two. The north was dry and barren, and while the south was a lot more prosperous and lush. But for a long time, the rulers of Kush actually preferred to stay in the north, not just to keep an eye on the Egyptian border, but also because it gave them control of all the trade that was coming up from the prosperous southern kingdoms of Africa to Egypt. And there, they say there's black pharaohs.
Yes.
And they were Kushites, these pharaohs.
Oh,
so the Kush, when people say Nubian king and queen,
yes,
it's the people from Kush. That's what they're referring to.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And I mean, pretty much Kush was in like a perfect location because, again, controlling the trade. It was all about the trade back then. And it also likely had the kingdom of Punt, a.k.a. a massively wealthy African civilization to the east. And so had control of the vast amounts of trade, which made them enormously wealthy and prosperous. Kush eventually grew so wealthy and powerful that they actually conquered the Egyptian dynasty and ruled over it. And again, that's why you had some of the pharaohs, quote unquote, were black, but they're all African because it's in Africa. Eventually, the invading Assyrians pushed them out around 650 BCE. So that's how old this is.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so then the Kushites returned to their homeland, moving further south to a city called Meroe, which would be used as the royal capital for the next 1,000 years.
Wow.
This is how old the kingdom of Kush is. Now, ancient Kush in particular is an extremely interesting civilization to study. It had a complex language, which they still haven't managed to decipher a lot of it.
Really?
They had incredible artwork and metalwork alongside monumental temples and pyramids. That's right. They had pyramids too.
Okay.
Yep. Their control of the trade routes into Egypt meant that gold, ivory, incense, leopard skins, and all the other must-have items for the Egyptian elite had to come through the Kushites first.
Oh, wow. That's power right there.
Yeah. And one of the rulers of this powerful and prosperous kingdom was a Nubian. There's a number of them, actually. There were many Nubian warrior queens, they called them. Because in Kush, they practice matrilineal succession, which basically means that the right to rule passed through the women of the royal family.
That just makes sense to me.
Yeah. Now, it didn't always mean that it was only women who ruled, but the women were basically in charge of deciding who would rule next.
I like that. It makes more sense.
So, because, like, for instance, so if a man was being crowned ruler during the coronation ceremony, his mother would announce to the god Amun that, quote, their child was ready to take the throne.
Oh, wow.
So the mother would have to announce it.
Listen,
and so,
as a mother, I approve. Yes.
I thought
that's
you would.
how it should be.
Now, women in this position were often given the honorific term of Kandake, meaning great woman in the Nubian language. And it was also a royal title usually given to female rulers. And it could also extend to the king's wife. So, but Kandake would later lead to some confusions, however, with the white people, with the Greeks and the Romans, who thought that these women were all called Candace.
Oh, my God. It's a very different word. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, they translated it into Greek as Candace. And so they thought all these women were named Candace versus it's like thinking all of them are named Pharaoh. Like Pharaoh's the name, but it's Pharaoh da-da, Pharaoh da-da. So yeah. I mean, that seems simple because they could do it for the men, but for some reason they couldn't do it for the women.
Yeah, well.
Now,
That's
during
an
this
old
time,
story, isn't it? Yeah.
it's an old story. Like,
Right.
remember our other episode about the Mayan queen? The same
Yes.
thing basically with the Kandake. So they could own their own land, conduct their own businesses, and basically were just independent women. So all like, if she's capable, she's queen
Yes.
mother. Like, yeah.
Makes sense.
Now, but on top of that, their influence was so great that often if the ruling king, their son, or the man they were in control over, displeased them, they could order him to commit ritual suicide.
Oh my God.
And then promote his successor to take power for herself. That's how powerful these women were.
Damn, that is power.
Yeah.
Like,
now,
I would say that's too much power, except I live in this day and age, and like maybe it's not. I don't know.
Maybe it's not. Now, the Kushite, the Kush Empire moved its capital after it moved to Meroe. The surviving dynasty would go on to have 5 different rulers, 3 of which were women. And one of the most significant ones was our lady today, Kandake Amanirenas.
Okay.
Arguably the most famous of that group during that time. Now, Amanirenas ruled from about 40 BC to about 10 BC.
Wow.
And often you'll find in like the West, they'll refer to her as Queen Candace of Ethiopia. But again, Candace is a misunderstanding of the title.
Incorrect. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while she ruled what the Romans knew as Ethiopia, it's actually in modern-day Sudan.
Oh.
Yeah. So she ascended to the throne after her husband, Tare Takase, died in 25 BC.
Okay.
And she ruled at a significant time because this was at the moment that the Romans were invading Egypt.
Oh.
So after the Romans invaded Egypt and were successful, they set their eyes on the riches of Kush.
Of course they did.
But because Amanirenas is like, I earned this spot.
Uh-huh.
She knew what they were up to. She saw the writing on the wall. So she was like, you know what? I'm going to go on the offense. So while Alois Gallus, the prefect or chief magistrate of Egypt, the Roman who had conquered and he was in charge of Egypt, was away fighting a campaign in Arabia in 24 BC, Amanirenas exploited this weakness of the leaderless state of Egypt and with some 30,000 soldiers launched an attack, capturing a whole series of Roman forts.
Okay. Yes,
and they were victorious.
Get it. Okay.
So much so that she found a statue of the Emperor Augustus and took its head, carrying it with her back to Meroe, where she buried it under the footsteps of a temple dedicated to her victory. So every time someone entered, they literally wiped their feet on the Roman emperor's head.
Oh, that's amazing.
Boom.
Yes.
Come on. I fucking love her. Come on.
Listen, mic drop right there. Yes.
Mic drop right there. And just like, not only will I wipe my feet on his head, but all the Kush citizens will be able to do that. Now, fun fact, they found the head in Meroe in 1912.
Oh.
And now it resides in the British Museum.
Of course it resides in the British Museum.
Yeah.
Because what about Africa shouldn't reside in the British Museum?
I mean, technically it is. I guess it's the Roman, but whatever, still. Today,
I mean, that's fair. But she took it. It's hers now.
But she took it. It's hers, exactly. Yeah. And she took it in defeat.
Yeah.
Now, today, there's a temple in Meroe decorated with drawings of Roman prisoners and victorious Nubian queens. So they documented it.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
That's fantastic. Solange Ashby, an Egyptologist and postdoctoral fellow at the University of California, says that such depictions are typical for the period and indicative of a wider culture where femininity and willingness to engage in warfare were not contradictory.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Now, as you can imagine, the Romans didn't take too well to this. They were like,
really?
They were like, what now? Say what now?
But I'm Roman and I'm male and European. How dare you?
they fought back against Amanirenas. I mean, like, she's a warrior queen, or for a reason.
Yeah,
now,
I guess.
Until recently, Western scholars had accepted the Romans' account of what actually went down after this. But today we know better. So according to the Romans' account at first, they drove out the Kushites forces from Egypt and forced them all the way back into Kush, where they captured their capital of Napata. But Napata hadn't been the Kushite capital for hundreds of years at that point.
Oh.
So that's one lie. Now, they also maintained that after they defeated the Kushite armies, the people of Kush were forced to negotiate a peace treaty between them and Augustus, which was signed in the year of around 21 or 20 BC and continued into the end of the 3rd century AD. But even according to their own scholars, Roman scholars that believe that peace treaty was an agreement where, this is what they said, where the Romans would leave the territory and the Kushites would never have to pay them tribute. So it's like,
that's what that was.
That doesn't sound like you guys defeated them.
No, it sounds like the opposite of that.
And they maintain that is basically a stalemate. So that's how they came up with that. But
no.
Now keep in mind.
Go on.
All of this is happening in the backdrop of the reign of Cleopatra in Egypt and Mark Antony in Rome, which were defeated in 30 BC by Augustus Caesar. So why would they just agree to just like go back home and not be paid if they had really won?
They wouldn't.
They wouldn't. It's some BS. Now, after this, so they basically went back. They just went back. They retreated.
Oh, my God.
And then signed a treaty saying that you don't have to pay us tribute. Like, basically, like, our bad. We'll leave you alone for now.
Oh, my God. Yes. She was like, you want to try me again? And they were like, I don't, actually. I'm a little scared. That's right. Like, tail between your legs. Bye-bye.
Yeah, they probably, and that's just, it's so interesting when you underestimate people and then you don't come fully prepared and you're like, oh shit. Like you basically, they went back with their, you know what, in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
Now after this, so she was successful. She was victorious. She spent the next 11 years of her reign in peace and one of the most prosperous times of Kush history. She was revered and remembered as the Black warrior queen who went up against the Roman Empire and succeeded in protecting her country from it. Now, she died in 10 BC. When she died, the crown passed to another woman, Amanirenas Keto, who is believed to be her daughter.
Okay.
And then Amanirenas Keto will continue the successes of her mother and the Kandakes before her to become even more wealthy than her mother had and made Kush even more successful and prosperous because, again, they controlled the trade. So
that is a good daughter right there. Good job.
Now, so why haven't we heard more about the Kandakes in general and Amanirenas? And so why haven't we heard of them? Well, because the Kushites ruled Africa for roughly 3,000 years.
What?
Twice as long as the Roman Empire.
Shit.
So, you guys, it caused racism. I know.
What?
It's shocking.
I don't understand. No, we eradicated that with the Civil Rights Amendment.
Because we all know if the Kushites were of European descent, like Greek or whatever, we would have heard all about them by now. But because they were Black, and they were Black in the sense that what we consider Black today, because let's just be clear, Black-white is really made up to justify the slave trade.
Oh, 100%.
Because before it was like, the Mongolians or the Africans, or it wasn't like Black-white. It wasn't. It wasn't any of that.
We didn't race it. We nationed it, basically.
Exactly. And so that is why when people say race is a construct, that is what they mean, because it didn't exist before then.
It literally didn't.
It literally didn't exist. So after the slave trade, they have to backtrack. Now, that is also why ancient Egypt, which white people are obsessed with, has been the center of debate for many years. And they also debate is African identity, even though Egypt is clearly in Africa.
It's
because it's Africa. That's a continent. It's
a continent. You can't really argue that. I don't know what the argument is. How is there an argument?
And also because when we're normally, especially in the West, taught ancient history, it generally comes in the form of about Egypt, Greece, or Rome. And it puts forth the idea that Egypt had more in common with those people, their Mediterranean neighbors, than the rest of Africa.
Yeah.
So, there is an author that I actually read this when I was in undergrad, an author by the name of Martin Bernal. Now, Martin Bernal is a white British man, and he wrote this book called Black Athena. And it raised an interesting point. And then he talks specifically about, like, before the slave trade, the Greeks and the Romans would talk about how they got a lot of their knowledge from Africa, and they would praise the scholars there. Northern Africa, all of it, right? They would praise them for the things that they began to use in mathematics and science. But after that, there was a concerted effort to whitewash African history and specifically Egyptian history. So both in modern scholarship and antiquity, with its position on the borders of the Mediterranean and the rest of continental Africa, they were considered, they're not really Black. Egypt is not really, and because of this, it allowed them to celebrate ancient Egypt. Excuse me. And then, and separate them from their African heritage. And also, we think of Egypt as like an Arabic state, which it is, but the Arabia, they also they actually conquered that land from what we would consider Black Africans, the Kushites. So it's again, because they didn't break it down into skin color, because skin color had a different meaning back then, because it doesn't matter. But that's one of the reasons that Egypt is more studied than Kush is, because it's easier to whitewash Egypt in general than it is in Kush. Because in Kush, when you go through their monuments, those people are obviously Black, what we consider Black today, with full lips, wide noses, all of the things. That's also seen in Egypt, but that's one of the reasons that Napoleon kept shooting off the noses of the Sphinxes and everything, because when you see him, you're like, oh, there's a Black person.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I know he's a dick, but I didn't know the specifics, I guess.
But you're like, why are all the they would find like little small statues. They're like, why are all the noses like destroyed? It's so weird. It's to obscure that fact. So it's the whitewashing of Egypt. So, Europeans, modern day Europeans, aka white people, could admire ancient Egypt without running up against the illogical idea that Black people, African people, are inferior. And one of the reasons also, because in some of the ancient Greco-Roman accounts of the people of Kush, as they call them, Ethiopia. I don't speak Greek, but Ethiopia, which in Greek literally means burnt face.
Oh, wow.
So darker skin. To the monument frescoes of Kushite rulers, their race has been impossible to ignore. So again, it's very obvious when you find the monuments in Kush. So far from the debate surrounding ethnicity, the Egyptian queens, the Kushite rulers were Black. Like, they were obviously Black. Again, of what people call Black today. Right. This was a kingdom of powerful African Black rulers whose wealth, control, and influence spanned 3,000 years.
One could think of it different ways. You could think, wow, fuck you, Europe, for fucking that up, because that's what happened. Or you could think of it in a different way, and you could think, well, that brings one hope, because we keep looking at our society as like forever and never going to change. But actually, we could overturn things, right? Be women-led. I mean, I have a plan here. Are you on board?
I'm always on board with that. But also, at this time, Europe was still in the Stone Ages, if that.
Yeah.
When these people were ruling. Because again, and we all know this scientifically, the cradle of civilization is in Africa. So
it is.
And the first human being is from Africa. But again, because of the modern day slave trade, which is, old to us.
But if you look at all of history, it's relatively modern.
Right. So that is Kandake Amanirenas, aka the warrior queen of push. Now, my two major sources for today's stories from thequeerclassicist.com and an article by Kai Mora from history.com. And of course, Martin Bonall's Black Athena. I highly recommend you guys check out Black Athena. It is, I remember when I read it in college, it blew my mind. Because again, this is a white British man who did this research. And it's so funny because there's a quote, there's like a soundbite from Sharon Osbourne. He's like, well, how can I be racist about anything? How can I? And I'm like, you should ask Martin Bonall, like your countryman. He will tell you how you can be racist.
Actually, I have a really good answer for you. I think we all in this room have a good answer for you. But, that's like white people doing the work, And then, I remember learning years ago, and there was a society, I don't know, I'll look this up, we'll look this up, where they found like plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Africa. I don't remember where. It was the Congo, maybe? And they shut it down. They found it. They discovered it. It was like an archaeological dig where like thousands of years ago, they had already figured out, I don't think electricity, but I think like plumbing and like well ahead in terms of sanitation, in terms of, and they hid it. And then they lied about who lived there.
I'll do you one better. Another one. There's this debate called the Great Zimbabwe. It's called Great Zimbabwe, and Great Zimbabwe is basically a structure of the royal palace, basically the royal city of before it became Zimbabwe. It was I forget what its ancient name is, and it's a city that was built completely with bricks, but there's no mortar. It's like very intricate. It's intricate, like bricklaying work, and it's so intricate. So I think it was in the 1920s when they found it. This idiotic British guy came in, and he, in his racism, was like, "Well, the Africans couldn't have built it, even though it's in Africa." So he's like, "Must be the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians must have built it here." But he was such an idiot. Even other white men are like, so he went in and he was like, well, I'm getting rid of all the trash of the Africans so he basically like bulldozed and lost a whole bunch of like important information. Even other white men are like, motherfucker, what are you doing? Why
would you do that?
Why would you do that? Because he's like, Phoenicians, we got to find the work of the Phoenicians. And it's also similarly, you know how they say the Mayans, is it the Mayans or I think it might be the Mayans, how they disappeared and like they abandoned their city and we still haven't quite figured out what that is.
I think it's the Mayans, yeah.
Something happened in this area too that the people just sort of left, so they're not really sure why. But a lot of it is still intact and it's beautiful. And I'm like, oh God, I want to go to Zimbabwe. And apparently even in modern day, it's a bone of contention with Black African scholars and other scholars who refuse to give the credit for building these like very advanced, like it's a whole town. It's a whole like town built like this. No mortar, no, like what's the moist thing that's in the middle? You can go online.
Okay. I'm gonna look it up.
But this motherfucker comes in there and he was like, the Phoenicians must have done this. So let me just bulldoze my way through this. And they were what?
Did he destroy the whole thing? No.
He destroyed a lot of evidence.
What a fucker.
Because listen, I have seen every Indiana Jones movie. So I know archaeology. Yes. Okay.
No, listen, I too am an archaeologist because of those movies. So
and I know
hear you.
That you have to, I've seen Jurassic Park. I know that you have to slowly brush.
Yeah.
Gently brush. Like, even I know this. Okay. So this fucker goes in there and he's like, basically the modern equivalent of bulldozing, like a whole bunch of evidence. So he destroyed a lot of the evidence. And before his superiors could be like, you's fired because you were an idiot.
Yeah. Peace out. Get on a plane. Bye.
But he's like, I'm just getting rid of the trash so we can get down to what the Phoenicians. I'm like, what?
Oh my God, why? It's so stupid.
So stupid, but it's all designed to go into white supremacy. Again, white is made up. Black is made up.
Yep.
Asians made up.
Yep.
It's all yellow, red. All of that is made up. It used to be just about what continent you were on, right? And even on the continent of Europe, again, they fought 100+ year war with their neighbors, and you know. But once they decide, it's all about money. But it's also, racism is not just about like money or power. It's also about like feeling superior.
It really is
to
like
others.
Yeah, you want to be like, oh, well, they just want to survive. That's their way of feeling like they can. No, it's really selfish and bad. Like there's really no justification for it.
It's done on purpose too, and we've seen throughout history, men, you know, getting rid of the contributions of women and femmes, and you know, and saying, oh, it didn't matter, and then you know, wiping out their influence on something, and like. To know that there's this history, the fact that this has survived despite this attempt is really, really interesting. But 3,000 years. 3,000 years. And that is the warrior queen of Kush, Kandake Amanirenas.
Let's talk about her all the time. I'm going to teach my children. I'm going to teach their friends. Like,
and one extra thing before I wrap her up, one final note, rather. She was known as like the one-eyed queen because she had lost an eye in battle.
Oh, God. Okay.
And they're like, yeah, that's our queen, though.
Yeah, I mean, she's probably proud.
Have you seen The Woman King yet?
No. I know.
You know what? I'm so mad. It took me so long to watch that movie. That movie is fucking phenomenal.
Okay.
And the fact that the Oscars ignored it is exactly what we're talking about here. That movie is fucking phenomenal. Like, and people are like, oh, it's not historically accurate. No shit, Sherlock. Of course it's not historically accurate. Yeah, it's fiction. It's, yeah. Like, but
that's your problem with it?
But the character that Viola Davis plays kind of reminds me of this woman.
Yeah.
It's all about like, they actually were like, oh, you got your first scar. You're a warrior, because it's all about being a warrior. Like, you know, so I'm telling you, Sal, and the kids will love this movie.
Oh,
I was so mad when I watched it that it took me so long to watch it.
I just realized my kids are going to love it.
I'm telling you. And online, a lot of the bad, like even from some Black people who are like, oh, it's not historically accurate. I'm like, it's a fucking movie, y'all. Get over yourself.
Listen,
like,
do you know a movie based on a true anything that's like 100% historically accurate? I don't.
It is so good. I'm telling. I was pissed when I finally watched it. I was like, because I watched this. I read the stuff online. And I was like, oh, you know, and I was so mad when I watched this movie. I was like, this movie is so fucking good, and it's enjoyable. Like it's like entertaining on top of it. It's
I will watch it. I will watch it.
It's so good. So I highly, highly recommend The Woman King. And I mean, these women have been kicking ass. But you know what? Even though they try and ignore and deny that these facts, we're living in a time where people are trying to do that now. Eventually the truth will out. So
yeah, I believe that too.
You know,
it's honestly like I discovered this right out of college. It's not that hard to find the truth.
That's the thing that gets me. No, there's literally Google. Like, you don't have to get in your car or on your bike, drive down or ride down to the local library and learn the Dewey Decimal System, which I still never figured out. And
but we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Exactly. Harass a librarian. Like, where can I find this book? Oh, you don't have this book. Can you order this book? You can literally go online for free. If you have internet or if you have a phone service, and find information if you have a question about something. I looked something up the other day because the pandemic has made me very dumb.
That's fine. Same boat.
And I'm like, what does that mean? Or what was that? And I went and Googled something like very simple. Now I can't remember it, of course, because my brain.
I do that all the time. I go into Google and I ask the question.
Just ask the question.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard.
Roast chicken. And it will give you 19 recipes of roast chicken. You know what I'm saying?
When we finish, I have not done my my salmon for today.
Oh.
I finally put it into my phone, like in the air fryer.
I understand.
400 or 390 at 13 minutes.
Okay.
Boom, it's done. Like literally, if you like, I want to cook ribs in the air fryer, there's 11 videos on how to do ribs in the air fryer.
It's not a problem. So if you want to know our real human history, go to the Google. It's there.
Go to the Google.
I found it in books. You just have to look. Books that are interesting. When history is interesting, it's probably true.
I'll do you one better. There's people who are doing the work. YouTube.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of historians there. The other day, I watched one about Marie Antoinette, what she probably looked like.
Ooh,
fascinating.
What'd she look like?
She basically looked like a basic girl. Because they also make the point that, you know, the portraits is not really what they look like, but kind of, it's basically the original filter.
Right.
But
she was like fine. She looks fine.
She looks fine. I mean, she looks cute, but she definitely probably not as attractive as her pictures because they have her death mask. So they recreated it, and they have them one on Napoleon. They have them on a bunch of people, and I was like, that is so fascinating. Like, what she probably kind of looked like. She today she would be like, oh, she's cute. You wouldn't necessarily be like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful, but you'd be like, oh, she's cute. Like, I mean, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, she wasn't cute, you know, and like
marriageable. Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, she was considered beautiful for that time. And again, that's another thing. Like, you know, what was considered really, really attractive may not be. It may be just sort of like regular now, but
it's just like taste.
But my point is that you can go in there, you can watch videos of like someone just set up a camera in like 1930 or 1950 and just in Manhattan or in LA, and it's just people driving in these big ass cars and all made up and walking down the street, and like you can find all this stuff, and there's historians and actual scholars who are actually doing the work because they know that knowledge is power.
Lavetta, total side note, don't you think YouTube should sponsor us? I'm just saying, this is a great commercial for YouTube.
I mean,
hashtag YouTube. I'm just saying YouTube.
It's there. Like, I mean, we can do a commercial for it. Yeah, you want to learn how to do salmon in the air fryer? YouTube it. But I mean, to your point, all of this stuff is there, and that's why people are trying to
get rid of it and to hide it.
Yeah, because there's also the power of like the physical book too. There's something that I miss about that, even though you can read on your Kindle or your iPad.
You know what else you could do? You could download the Notorious Women podcast today. Huh?
Oh, that was smooth. And
on that good,
note,
right?
That wraps it up for our latest episode of Notorious Women podcast. Guys, remember to follow us on all the things. You can find us on every podcatcher you can think of. Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can find us. But we also want you to share it. Get the word out there. You know, just copy the link. Send it to your friend. It's easy. It's easy. Right?
Spread the love.
Spread the love. If you want to support us financially, you can always do that at We Love the Moolah. You can do that at patreon.com/notoriouswomen. That's patreon.com/notoriouswomen. You can become a patron of the podcast for as little as $2 a month. You can do $5 a month, do $10 a month, or you can do a one-time donation of
$200,000. It's up to you. I'm just spitballing here, you know.
I mean, at this point, we'll take 10, 20,000. I mean, that'd be good.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
No, that's
a
true.
Good start.
Let's like calm down, Miriam. I hear you.
No, but I mean, I'm all about that $200,000. I mean, we pay our taxes in case
always, girl.
Uncle Sam is listening, because you know,
always, girl.
But yeah, for as little as $2 a month, we'll take that, or whatever you feel in your heart to contribute. If you'd like to do that, again, you can find that at patreon.com facebook.com/Notorious Women. And Miriam will tell you in other ways you can support the show.
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram. So easy. It's Notorious Women Podcast. Where we have fun there. Come join us. And you can DM us there if you want. I always check that. And if you want to email us instead, you can email us at notoriouswmpod@gmail.com. Yeah.
That is great. And if you have any additional things you want to say about the Notorious Women that we covered today, we always encourage you to, DM us, email us.
Yes, tell us.
Give us some feedback.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. We're not too... I am very, very smart. I don't know about Miriam, but...
Wow, girl. Okay. Like, I heard you, because you said that out loud. Okay, I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I did
that was out loud. I'm very smart. I'm not defensive.
You know I love you. I'm telling you, the pandemic has made me very, very dumb. So, but yeah, on that note, guys, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.